Hey there, my name is Joe Hall, and in this video, I'm going to tell you about the exciting world of featured snippets and rich search engine result page optimization. So in this video, we're going to talk about what exactly are featured snippets, what are the most common types of featured snippets, what are some of the known prerequisites for obtaining a featured snippet. We're going to talk about how a user's query may have a relationship to a featured snippet. And then we're going to talk about how having the right content formatting and having that formatting in a logical order can influence featured snippets. And then we're going to get down into some details and talk about optimizing for paragraph featured snippets, optimizing for list featured snippets, and optimizing for table featured snippets. And so to get started, we really need to talk about what is a featured snippet. And ironically, or maybe not ironically, if you run the query, what is a featured snippet comes up to tell you what a featured snippet is. And so a featured snippet is a summary of content related to a user's query, which is displayed on top of Google search results, and it's extracted from a web page and includes the page's title and URL. And so in this screenshot example here, we can see what is a featured snippet, and a paragraph is shown right here from Google's developer hand guide about featured snippets in your website. And then below that, we see a people also ask box, which is sometimes also included within the featured snippet ecosystem. Now, what are the most common featured snippets? We just saw an example of one, and usually that one is called a paragraph snippet. But there are also other types, and I'm going to talk about four of the most common here, but there are also many other types of featured snippets that are coming out, all the time. But there is the paragraph featured snippet that we just took a look at. There's also the ordered list featured snippet, the unordered list snippet, and then table snippets. And we're going to take a look at examples of all of these right now. But before we get into that, what are some of the prerequisites for featured snippets? If you've got a piece of content that you're optimizing and you think that piece of content should get a featured snippet or should rank high for a featured snippet, then you're going to want to follow SEO best practices. So the page needs to be on the first page of ranking for the query that you want to get a featured snippet for. And so it's not, if you're ranking on page 2 or page 3 for a specific query, then it's not likely that you're going to get a featured snippet for that query yet. So the page really does need to be ranking on page 1, and especially if there's already a featured snippet on that first page that somebody is already getting. So you have to be ranking on page 1, which means you need to really adhere to SEO best practices. Also, the content needs to be aligned well with the query. And so this comes down to things like your keyword optimization for the content, how well the query intent matches up with your content. So is it a commercial query? Is it an informational query? Does your content satisfy the need of the user? And is the content optimized for the term? The content needs to have logical formatting and structure. So it needs to have a structure with paragraphs and heading tags and a structure that makes sense not only to the user but also to a search engine algorithm that might be comparing that page against thousands of other pages. If your content structure is all over the place in different fragments then it may be difficult for the search engine to really understand what the topic and point of the content is. In-depth content helps. So in-depth content is not always required for a featured snippet, but it definitely helps if you have a long form article or a very detail oriented piece of content that provides lots of information, lots of details. That usually helps more than not for obtaining a featured snippet. And then content patterns help. Content patterns are, if you're showing, if you're in your content, if you are presenting like a series of data or a series of content that are grouped together differently, then they should follow a pattern. So, for example, if on one page you're showing the team roster for a sports team, and then later on down the page you show another team roster for a different sports team, then those two team rosters should be formatted the same way. And so you might format them in a table, or you might format them in a list or something. The same goes for like paragraphs. If you're going to talk about a specific subtopic in a paragraph and include an image that's related to that topic, and then later on down the content, you talk about a different subtopic, but you might want to include an image within that section as well. Essentially, creating patterns within the content that are aligned and make it look like the content is organized in a structure with a pattern really helps. So let's talk about getting into this deeper. Talking about featured snippets with the right query. So what does that mean? Not every query is going to get a featured snippet, right? And so a lot of times the featured snippet appears for queries that include proper nouns. So that's like a person, place, or thing that is well known or has a unique characteristic to them. And a lot of times featured snippets show for question content. And so the example here that I have is, who is Jim Henson? How tall is Kermit the Frog? What planet is Gonzo from? These are all questions obviously related to the Muppets. But ideally you want to try to look for unique pieces of data that are related to specific entities that people might be searching for. Otherwise, if it's a very broad question or a very broad topic, it probably will not get a featured snippet. So featured snippets also require logical content formatting and structure. We talked a little bit about this already, but essentially what this means is that the content needs to be structured and laid out in a way that uses like proper heading tags, meaning like H1, H2, H3, and H4 tags in the correct hierarchy. The content should be divided into logical sections and subsections, so you might start off with a very broad topic or section, and then inside that have several paragraphs with subtopics or subsections. Headings should contain targeted queries and terms. So, I mentioned the proper use of H1, H2, H3s. Those should all contain targeted terms, especially the types of terms or language that you want to align with the featured snippet. Like I said before, in-depth content helps. So more content, the better. You want to have, long form articles work really well, etc. Content patterns help. I mentioned that before too. Again, this just means kind of like formatting the same types of content in the same types of way, so that the search engine can easily understand that these two pieces of content are somehow related, even though they might have unique content included in them. And then an article summary at the beginning or end is helpful. And so a good example of all of this, let me just show you a piece of content I created. This is a blog post on one of my websites called How to Secure Your WordPress Hosting. And down here, we start off with an intro paragraph right here, and then a list of table of contents. This is what I mentioned when I mentioned, the summary section. Anyways, let's keep going here. Let's optimize for paragraph featured snippets. So this is going to be essentially a paragraph like we looked at in the first slide. But in this example, we're looking at hot dog eating champion, and then this featured snippet, a really good example here from Nathan's Hot Dog Company. They hold a hot dog eating contest every year, and this clearly shows the answer champion Joey Chestnut, the 2022 hot dog eating contest. And this is a great example of a featured snippet because, like I mentioned, this is a proper noun. Joey Chestnut is a person. He's a competitive eating champion. But some of the elements that helped that do well was that the targeted terms were in the proper heading tags, and then the content should be in clear and direct language in the paragraph right below the heading. And so, like, if the query is a question like "Who is Joey Chestnut?", then that should be in a heading. I mean, underneath the heading should be a paragraph that discusses exactly who he is, and that paragraph should contain at least 45 to 55 words. Now, if we look at that example before about the hot dog eating contest champion, on this article right here, this is the article that had that featured snippet. On that article, there is an H2 heading tag for 2022 hot dog eating contest, and the paragraph right below that says world champion Joey Chestnut currently holds the title for hot dog eating world champion after setting a new world record of 76 hot dogs and buns in 2021. So this is very clear and easy to understand language that has a relationship to the heading right above it. And then also both of these have a relationship to the query that was run. So let's now take a look at list featured snippets. And I mentioned before that there are two different types of list featured snippets. There are ordered and unordered list featured snippets. This example here is what are the top boat brands. And here we can see a list of ordered featured snippets because they are numbered. So this is top 10 best boat brands and manufacturers. And they show the first 8 right here. With a link for more items right here. To optimize for this type of featured snippet, you're gonna want to include an article summaries table of content in the form of a list at the beginning or end. So that is again like this list right here. This is a list of all the different paragraphs on the in the article, and if you're doing an ordered list, then this will be numbered like this so far. And then you're going to want to use numbered heading tags if appropriate. So if this is a top 10 list or whatever, you're going to want to include like number 4, in the heading tag. So you might use H2 tags for the heading tags in like a top 10 list, and each one of those you're going to want to put like number 6, for the 6th item. Include those in the heading tags. And then use the right list type. So unordered list and ordered list, that can be a big thing here. So to get started here, if we look at the article summaries and the table of content, I already showed you an example of that here. But what we're talking about essentially is you can add this at the beginning or the end or both. You want to include it in a list format. list items should match content headings and subheadings. So if you look here, like each one of these items in this list, this is just one of the H2s. These are all things that are mentioned in the H2 tags of each one of these. So you can see this first one here is use a web application firewall, and that is the first H2 tag right here. And then you want to use anchor jump links in each item helps. So what that means is right here you can see if I click any one of these things, like hide your WordPress version, if I click that, it takes me down to that. This is a jump link that takes me down to that section of the article. And that really helps because that helps Google understand that this section of the article is about hiding your WordPress version. And then there are some WordPress plugins to make these article summaries automatically if you're using WordPress. And so the first one here, Easy Table of Contents, I use this quite a bit. It's a good plugin. It basically creates this table of contents. And all you have to do is create the article content, and then it will essentially go and scan that article content for all the different headings. So this is an H2, and it will go ahead and just include a table of contents automatically at the top of the article after you're completed. Let's take a look at the different list types. And so, this is kind of looking at HTML a little bit. This is an unordered list, and so this is a list of things that maybe don't need to fall in a sequence. They're just sort of arranged in a bulleted list just for presentation purposes. And in that case, you can just use this UL for unordered list. But an ordered list is OL, and it will be displayed with numbers on them. I understand that from if you're not used to writing HTML, this might not make sense to you. But if you're using something like WordPress, WordPress does have these different options integrated into the Gutenberg editor, WordPress content editor. So you can just select the difference between an ordered list and an unordered list. This does make a difference because the search engines will understand that if it's an ordered list, they will understand that this part of the content, first item, needs to come ahead of the other parts, and they'll analyze the content when processing it for featured snippets in that order. So this does make a difference between which one you're going to use, and it really does help by utilizing these HTML tags. Let's talk about table featured snippets. And so a table featured snippet is typically content that's displayed in the search results as a table. And typically this type of content will come directly out of a web page that is presenting the content as a table. So for example, in this example, we're looking at gas tax by state 2022, and we've got the title of the page here, and then they literally just went in and took the table out of this page and put it here in the search results. If you click view 48 more rows, it will take you actually to the page itself. And so this is a great thing because now you get a link here to the page and a link down here to the page. That's really nice. I've seen some instances where Google will understand table content so well that they'll even reorganize the content and kind of reposition it a little bit in a way that they think that the user might better understand. And so that's kind of interesting. You can obviously you want to use tables for data. So you don't want to really use tables for like paragraph content or anything like that because it'll be confusing with the search engines. If you have numbers or any specific data that need to be broken out into different data points is the best thing to do. You want to use easy to understand column and row headers. So I guess if it's a column, then that would be a header. If it's a row, I think that you would call it a label. But you want to use easy to understand language within those headers and labels. The search engine can understand, and so they'll know, like, okay, in this column is the percentage of tax by state, or in this column it is the average amount of gasoline purchased, per state. And they'll understand what each data point means within the column. And then within those columns and row headers, the target terms should be included. And so if you want that content to get a featured snippet, you should include the target terms within the labels and the headers of that table. And then tables should be under appropriate headings. So we talked about this before with the paragraph featured snippet, that you really should include the tables underneath the appropriate headings, because sometimes the search engine might have a difficult time really understanding what that table is about. So if you were to put that gasoline tax table on the page without an appropriate heading above it, the search engines might not really understand what it is. So if you place a heading tag above the table that says, give the table a name and describe what is inside the table, it gives more relevance and keyword semantics to the table. And then here's an example of a table that I might include on my own website. And so this is top pages and page views on hallanalysis.com. And so you can see this heading tag right here is a very good description of the table itself. And then the column headings have very specific and unique names here for the data found in each column. And then the row label includes all of the specific, labels here in very specific terms. So if by chance, for some weird reason, if somebody wanted to know, like, how many page views did Hall Analysis software page get, then Google would it would be easier for Google to understand that page views, software, and Hall Analysis could all be put together if everything is labeled correctly, and then it would hopefully come back in 665. Ideally, we're just trying to make it easier for the search engines to understand what the data is in this table using the appropriate labels and the appropriate header columns. So I've went through a lot about the different types of featured snippets just now, and I probably went through that pretty quickly. But I want you guys to leave this video with thinking about new opportunities, because featured snippets are changing all the time, and different SERP features and different things happening in the result pages are occurring constantly. And I probably didn't include everything that is even possible in this video. It would take too long to do that. So what I want to impart to you guys now is to explore new opportunities as you see them within the search results. And so if you see something new in the search results, you should ask yourself, what can I learn from this? And the types of questions that you want to ask yourself are things like, what is the relationship to the content in the query, right? So if you see something interesting in the search results, then you should ask yourself, okay, the content that's coming from, like, how is that content related to the search term that we put in? Like, is it optimized well? Is it the same topic? Like, what is the relationship between that page and the query that we put in? What type of content is it? And this is very important because Google is now understanding like different types of content. They know that A blog post is a blog post. They know that a product page is a product page. They'll know an archive page. They'll know an about page. They might know a staff profile page. So it's really important to know like what type of content is getting the featured snippet, and if there's any relationship to that. What is the page structure? So take a look at how the page is laid out. Is it a long form article? If it is, does it have the correct heading tags? How many paragraphs are there? How long are the paragraphs? Does each paragraph have some of the similar features or elements to it? Try to identify really what the structure of the content is. If it's not long form content, it might be like a list of products or a list of real estate listings. Try to look at the structure of that content and see how the search engines might be interpreting the page based on that structure. And then finally, what HTML elements are supporting content found in the featured snippet? So if you find, when you look at the featured snippet, if it's a paragraph featured snippet, for example, then you might say, okay, what HTML elements are supporting that paragraph? If it's simply just a paragraph tag, then that kind of explains everything. But it could be that that paragraph is in a special spot on the page that is surrounded by other HTML elements that might be interesting. If the featured snippet is a table, take a look at that HTML that supports the table, and any other HTML elements that help support the content found inside that featured snippet. Anyways, I hope you guys really enjoyed this talk. I think featured snippets are a really exciting thing to investigate and to understand, and can be a really fun way to get more traffic to the site by just optimizing content that's already ranking really well. Anyways, hope you guys learned a lot, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions or thoughts going forward.